Just over 6 months ago, I sold off a huge chunk of my initial watch collection, just under 20 watches, to be able to afford my Black Bay 54. For clarity, even then I couldn't afford to buy a new one. This one cost me just under $2,800 and was bought through eBay using their authenticity guarantee system. For even more clarity, it's worth mentioning that the authenticity guarantee does exactly what it says on the tin, that it's a genuine watch, but that doesn't mean they're taking the whole thing apart to check individual elements or even check that the watch is necessarily in working condition. On the flip side, I've used it several times and had no issues at all, so I think the message is that experiences may vary. The purpose of this video, as the title indicates, is to give a long-term review of my time with this model. I will just add that if I sound a little off, I am. A lovely combination of jet lag and tattoo flu, but we soldier on. With all that said, let's get into the video. I'll come right out and say it. My overriding sentiment with this watch is that it's a risk to watch collecting as a hobby. Of all the watches that I own, this is clearly the front runner when it comes to a one and done kind of collection, and it does leave you pondering whether there's any actual point buying more. I consider myself to be a fairly avid collector, and I have to say that if I wasn't enjoying making videos about watches so much, I could quite easily have stopped here, at least for a while. This video is going to focus on unpacking exactly why I feel this way about the Black Bay 54, and I'll do my best to be as balanced and objective as possible, despite this being a very biased starting point. Let's begin with perhaps the single most important factor at play here. That to me is the dimensions of the piece. The Black Bay 54 has a diameter of 37mm, making it considerably smaller than most modern dive pieces. That makes it more wearable, lightable, and more comfortable. But actually, I think the more impactful dimension at play here is the thickness of the watch, which comes in at just over 11mm. You might hear that and not think too much of it, but you have to remember that this has period correct domed sapphire crystal. I say period correct there in terms of its design aspirations. Not only that, but it's also rated to 200 meters of water resistance. As someone who focuses primarily on the budget section of the watch market, I can tell you quite confidently that the majority of the 200 meter rated divers you'll find are at least a couple of millimeters thicker. You'll also notice that a lot of watches boasting domed sapphire crystal have two separate watch thickness measurements, one with and one without the crystal taken into account. So that thickness actually points towards some really neat engineering going on underneath the surface. A thinner watch means that it'll fit underneath the cuff of a shirt more easily, and you're also a little less likely to knock it during daily wear. Of course, the weight is also going to be comparatively reduced when held against a thicker model. But actually, none of these considerations, while beneficial, are the real positive of the dimensions. The traditionally sized Black Bay models are really quite slab-sided in my opinion, and that has always been something that was enough to put me off their aesthetics. No such issue with the 54. Having said that, those polished sides are prone to picking up little scratches still, and you might be able to spot a few that my watch has picked up since the last video I made on it. The main area where this will actually show up, however, is definitely the clasp, which shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but my word, it really does show there. That brings me onto the looks of the watch, and my feeling on them is quite simple. I'd like to challenge you to find me a better looking piece for a lower price point. I'm genuinely not sure it's possible, but I will quantify that statement. Sure, there are more interesting textured dials available for less, but I'm not sure that any of them ooze the same luxury and class that the 54 does. The black and gold just has an air of quality about it. I love the snowflake handset, the print work, and indeed the use of white space. I simply can't find fault with it. It's a simple design, I grant you, but one that is absolutely timeless. One slight issue for some is the lack of a red triangle at the top of the bezel. Personally, I prefer it without, but I do see why some people might prefer the more traditional coloration in that regard. Another aesthetic choice that I know can be a stumbling block is the false rivets on the side of the bracelet. On wrist, the truth is that you don't see them very often at all. I would agree that the bracelet would be a little nicer without them, but where I don't see them much in daily wear, they are far from a deal breaker for me. The point about daily wear is an important one, because aside from a few weeks with my Kuo Royal Smith, this has been my daily wear at work and for formal occasions ever since I bought it. This might sound really stupid to some, but I'll go ahead and say it anyway. I genuinely feel a little more confident when I'm wearing it. It makes me feel a bit special. I've owned a lot of watches at this point in my collecting journey, and very few of them have ever really made me feel this way. I don't think that it will have that impact on everyone though. If you have a larger wrist or prefer something with a lot of presence, this isn't going to be the model for you. I don't necessarily see that as an issue though, as people who that applies to are already more than catered for with the Black Bay 58 range. I made a comment on a recent video about not wanting to wear my dive watches in salt water for snorkeling, and I got a comment back asking if I realised how stupid that sounds. I completely agree, that does sound idiotic on the surface, but the truth is a Tudor isn't necessarily going to be cheap to service, so I'm not really interested in doing anything with mine that might exacerbate the need for one. I'm not going swimming with it, I'm not taking it to the gym or for a run, and given the rough area that I live in, I'm not wearing it going to town either. I don't necessarily view that as a bad thing though, for while I don't feel I can wear it all the time, that just means I can carry on collecting. As I said at the start of the video, this watch is good enough to be a one and done. And on the previous video I released on the model, that sentiment was actually echoed a lot in the comments, so it isn't just me who feels this way. As far as the channel goes, have no fear, my addiction to watches is way too strong to stop here, but I cannot emphasise enough how highly I rate the 54, even if I feel I can't always wear it. It's time to wrap things up with a summation of my time with the watch so far. I think the first thing to say is that this is one of the most expensive pieces I've ever bought. I'm usually shopping at a far more restrained price point, so stepping side out of my budget comfort zone was a bit of a risk with this. As I mentioned, I sold a lot of watches, many of which I was very fond of, to be able to purchase this. So I think the most important point from my 6 months is that I don't regret that decision at all. In fact, the only thing that I might do differently is save the extra to buy one brand new, as mine did have a few signs of wear and tear. And while I don't mind that, I much prefer it when I'm the one who is responsible for them. I think it's better to think of bumps and scratches as reminders of your history with the watch, rather than something you immediately feel the need to go out and fix. With that in mind, in the UK at least, there are a number of established high street jewellers who will often have functioning discount codes running anywhere between 10 and 20%, and there are a number of ways that you might access these. Coupon websites, student discount schemes, the blue light card, and so on. Even a 10% discount code makes for a huge saving when the price is running into the thousands. So if you wanted to buy one new, I would definitely check carefully for codes. If you're a regular eBay user, you might find that every now and again they offer you a personalised discount code even on a second-hand purchase. So it's well worth checking in there too for the best possible prices. I will just add to close that if the Black Bay is an unrealistic proposition for you, in my opinion the next best thing in terms of a diver is the Trident Pro 300 range from Christopher Ward, which is available for around a fifth of the price. And below that, I'd be looking towards the Seiko Presage range of divers, some of which can be picked up new for less than $500. As ever, thank you for your time. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this in the future.